car.
Thank you, thank you. How do you pronounce your last name?
It's Fengel.
Fengel.
Yeah,
Fengel.
soft G instead.
Okay.
It's arguable though.
Fengel. Okay, Jordan. Can you, Jordan or Fengel? What's the best?
Jordan's fine.
Jordan? Okay. Can you just tell me a little bit about yourself, starting with your name, age, and your occupation?
Sure. So I'm Jordan Fengel. I'm 39, and my occupation is Executive Director of the State of Texas Alliance for Recycling. So it's the state's nonprofit recycling organization. It's been around for 29 years.
29 years. Oh, wow. That was going to be my next question is, can you tell me a little bit about STAR, about what that company does?
So it's a 501c3. We're a nonprofit, and we have acted as basically the state's nonprofit recycling organization, or the state's recycling organization, for 29 years. And so that varies across the country. Some states have well-funded for-profit organizations, and some have the nonprofit fill that kind of gap. And then Texas historically has just had us.
Yeah.
So we've been on a long mission for 20-something years to increase recycling in Texas. Mm-hmm. In March of this year, China, who has been processing basically the globe's recyclables for 25 years, said they don't want recycling anymore. So
this year they said that?
Yeah, March of this year.
Wow.
So they've had a few different so the green fence went into act in 2013, and that was our first kind of like, you're sending stuff over to us to process, but it's full of garbage. There's a lot of trash in our stuff, so you guys need to clean it up. Uh-huh. We didn't clean it up. There's a film that you should check out. It's called Plastic China.
China?
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Okay.
And it is the film that has said that President Xi Jinping specifically viewed and made his environmental policy decisions based off of, because it shows the behind the curtain scene, whereas like right now everyone thinks it's very clean and pretty. As you put it in the cart, it gets baled up, it gets sent, and magically becomes a bottle.
Oh, it disappears. Right? Yeah.
Unfortunately, if you look at the correlative process, American recycling and global recycling in whole has actually contributed to the ocean patches, the gyres. It's a direct correlation, because we send all of our material over to a developing country who doesn't have infrastructure to mitigate waste, to clean up pollution, and keep stuff where it's supposed to be. So if they're flaking and rinsing plastics, we have infrastructure here so it doesn't get down the drains and go to the rivers. They don't have that there.
They don't have
So when they rinse and clean, they lose plastics into the environment. If it rains and floods during monsoon season, they don't have landfills and processing places with nice fences and it's literally every picture you see, it's very crude in the operation. So our 25 years of relying on them as a processor has basically leaked enough stuff into the ocean to create these huge gyres of plastic.
Yeah.
So and everyone thinks we've done a great job at recycling for the last 25 years.
Yeah.
It sucked. We've done a horrible job at it.
Yeah.
We've done a good job of telling people to put stuff in a cart and bale it up, and then if you recycle that bottle, it's a pen, or it's look at these cool T-shirts. I mean that's not recycling; it's downcycling.
Yeah.
It's a loss of our product. You can't recycle shirts very easily. You can't recycle pens. So you're using a recycled product to make an environmental good thing, but actually
unrecycled.
It's unrecyclable. So it only has one more life cycle, and that's it. Whereas a bottle can be recycled more than once.
Yes.
It's not indefinite like glass, or metal, but it's recyclable. So we've lived on this kind of fallacy or like misnomer that recycling is just this greatest thing ever, and it's been very problematic. And so all of this has now come to head into national attention because of China going in March saying, hey, we're done.
Yeah.
We've built our economy and we're big, and now we can sustain ourselves, and they basically said they don't want the world's garbage. So and if you look, so they'll accept some stuff, but they have a contamination rate of 0.5%. That's what they want. We can get around 2% here. 1.5 I heard out of LA percent contamination. That's it. On average, what we bale up and get ready to process in America, it has a contamination rate around 15 to 34%. So literally 1 out of every 4 items that someone puts in the cart is not supposed to go in that cart.
1 out of every 4?
That's the average.
Roughly, yeah.
About 25%.
Wow.
So it's very problematic. And so there's a lot of issues, and now it's just building up everywhere around Texas in America, and 13 states we know of in America are landfilling recycling. So it's
13. What landfilling recycling? What does that mean?
They've stopped curbside collection and processing of recyclables, and now it's just they told their residents to stop recycling. Basically, they're burying it all because
oh my God,
because there's no markets. Because to make the recyclables into a feedstock to use to make a bottle or a shirt or whatever else. It has to go through multiple processes. Those are all most of them are in China right now.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of American processing. So on a daily basis, we produce a bunch of stuff in carts and we bale it, but China doesn't want it. So what do you do with it? So there's nothing to do with it, and it's valueless, but it costs a lot of money to separate. So now people are like, screw it, throw it away.
Oh my gosh, I did not know that.
Yeah, a lot of it's just now kind of coming to light.
Yeah, and hopefully it comes to light a little bit more.
We're getting there.
That's pretty crazy. I did not know about that China. I'm gonna do a little bit more research on that.
Yeah, it's called the National Sword.
Yeah,
it's huge.
Wow, I had no idea.
Big problem, and it's not going to get any better.
Yeah.
So 2020. So right now they are again accepting some materials with a 0.5 contamination rate, but what the problem is they've banned mixed paper and mixed plastic. If you look at what comprises our waste stream in America, about 65% of what goes into the cart is mixed paper and mixed plastic. So over half of the material that we put in there actively as a consumer society has nowhere to go right now.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Crazy to think
yeah,
about.
it is. And so now you see pricing is going to increase. So a lot of cities are being like, hey, these processors need a lot more money to process your recyclables. So your residents need to pay more. But then the message gets out that's like, well, China doesn't even want it. So it becomes like this conflicting thing because you're asking me to pay more for the service that's supposed to be important, but nobody wants it. So you're making me pay more for trash. So it's this, we're losing literally 30 years of education and infrastructure placement on recycling because of like what's happened since March. It's crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yes. Welcome to my world.
Oh my gosh.
China.
Jeez, I'm gonna look
Yeah, I
into
rabbit
it.
hole too. So throw a shoe at me like when you're like, hey, 60 questions.
No, it's absolutely perfect. You answered my question. Very basic question. What is recycling, or how does Star or you define just the term recycling? How do you guys go about? I know you guys have said it in your report.
And that's it. I mean, it's basically taking a material, processing it into a feedstock so it can become another material. That's the very basic definition of it. So that can be mechanical by shredding and grinding. That can be thermally through melting and pelletizing, or that can also be chemically. So that's where take off my Star hat and put on my whatever hat. Like, chemical separation and chemical recycling is going to be what we have to do to get through the problems of today. Because right now we have way too much mixed plastic, too much mixed materials to actually recycle it into something useful. Yes. These paper cups right here, it's a mix of materials. It's a paper cup, but it's also on the inside of it, so it doesn't leak. It's a very thin layer of plastic. So now that's why we can't recycle it, because you're mixing a biological component and a technical component. So that becomes, but that plastic cup right there, you can totally recycle. So that's what we really want is a way to be able to. That's why I firmly believe in chemical separation, because no matter what the composition of the material, you can break it back down to a monomer. And the monomer is then we can turn it back down to whatever we want. So like mechanical separation can only get you a flake. So it has to be very pure and contamination free. Where if we chemically separate it, it breaks it all the way down to the inks, the dyes, the plasticizers, everything that goes into making that product can actually be parsed back out and granulated and recaptured. And so we can use those plasticizers again. We can use those inks again. You can use all these things where mechanical recycling, you lose a lot of that. So
you said that was with chemical recycling?
Chemical recycling, yeah.
What's the biggest difference between those
So
two?
again, breakdown by monomer, or so you're actually increasing your manipulation of the material and expanding your usability of that product. So where a plastic bottle, mechanical separation just flakes it up into little flakes of PET and they go back into a pellet. Well, we could actually get away from the polyethylene phthalate, whatever it is, and break it back down to a very simple petroleum monomer and make whatever. So if it wants to be gas, or if it wants to go diesel, if we want to make polystyrene, like we can break it back down to the chemical element and make a new plastic out of it.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's chemical recycling, and it's happening in America. In Ohio, it's Geotech Polymers. They're a company they're the only company that does green chemical recycling of plastics.
What company is that?
Geotech Polymers. Really cool guys. Their website's pretty crappy, but you'll be able to see. You see some of their stuff, what they're doing, and they're in Ohio. Cool guys, Sanjay and Pratik. They're cool guys.
Interesting. I had no idea there were so many different ways to recycle one object. I know you
plastics.
mentioned in our email about the 2014 TRDI, and I think that's what I have. You said that was the first report, the state's first real look at the economics of recycling in Texas.
Yep.
In your opinion, why was that the first report done so recently?
The state just hadn't acted. And that's what we're asking for this legislative session. So
Yeah.
in 1990, Governor Ann Richards really put a comprehensive and very inclusive plan in place, the Solid Waste Act of Texas, 1989, I believe. It afforded the state that it was a concern and a state priority to manage resources, to invest in recycling, reuse, refurbishment, not just take the trash out, but actually expand that. Make sure you take care of your resources for the benefit of the state. You know what I mean? She was very, very strong on what she wanted the state to do. Politics turned a little bit, and there was a funding mechanism created for it. Everything was in place to make our recycling industry very strong in Texas, but it never happened. So the fund kept growing. So every ton of waste that gets put into a landfill, there's a tipping fee. So they pay a certain amount of money for how much they bury. That money goes to the state, and it gets put into it's called a GR 5000 fund.
Okay.
That fund is for, Council of Governments, COGS and all that stuff, Texas is divided up into Council of Governments. So each Council of Government has a certain number of counties in it. So Central Texas, COG or whatever has Travis and all these other, anyways.
Okay.
They get money from the state to do projects. So household hazardous waste, or do they need to increase recycling programs, whatever they want. So they get a little bit of money. All of this comes from those tipping fees. But the state has essentially sat on that money for years and used it as a rainy day balancing the budget fund. So it had hundreds of millions of dollars sitting in it. But Hurricane Harvey came up, and so that actually just paid for a lot of the cleanup of Houston, which is good. Yes.
What was the turning decision to finally do this in 2014?
It's because no data existed. And so that's why when you look at recycling, it's often been purported as an environmental measure, right? So I come from California. You can sell that message. It's good for the earth. It's good for everything. That works. Texas, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So you can't sell environmentalism. You have to sell economics, and economics are backed up by data and true money and jobs and diversion, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There was nothing to quantify that. So STAR and then another organization self-funded the state's first project, which was TRDI. So we funded it and then took it to the state and said, hey, out of our own money, we made this little study. This is the data. You guys should be doing a better one. Do a state one because you have the money. So that's where House Bill 2763 came out. That's that.
That's what this is.
Yeah, that was the result of our last session. So this is the state's funded. So the state paid for this agency to go in and study the economics on Texas.
Based on the report, the study that you guys did.
Correct, the TRDI.
Okay.
And this was just released.
That's what I noticed. This was the one.
The first one in 14, or it came out in 15, but it was a 14 study.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that was going to be my next. Well, that was going to be my next one. Is if you can tell me a little bit about this report. I know it's totally jam-packed, so that's a pretty broad question.
Yeah, it quantifies what we're doing in Texas as far as economics. So it's 17,000 jobs. It's $3.3 billion in economic activity. It's $195 million paid to local and state taxes from the recycling industry. It puts numbers behind the activity instead of we saved the air in 50 years.
People love numbers.
Right. Data is the new oil. So that's the same. So really, and this is what now we're using for this session. We are asking the state, again, to fund an in-market development plan. So we don't need a study. We need a plan. And a plan is very prescriptive and comprehensive. And what we need the state to do is guide how they are going to support, and not only that, but further grow the recycling industry to manage the materials we produce here, but even more so in light of China. So we can't continue to hope for that proverbial silver bullet over in the Southeast Asia seas to save us. Let's create jobs here. Let's save landfill space here. Let's build local economies off of managing our own resources, which seems cut and dry to me, but it's, for the last 25 years, that's a, no pun intended, foreign notion. You know what I mean? So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So he's probably already answered this. The overall objective of the TRDI
was to give the state its first real look at the economics of recycling. So not environmental, but how did it work economically? How did it benefit the state? What did it provide to the state? That way we could get something because that's the only way you're going to get support or money or anything else
And like
is
you
with
said,
data.
it's definitely a different approach to recycling as most people go about doing it. You know, the whole go green,
Save
that kind of
energy.
stuff.
Yeah, aluminum can saves enough energy to power your TV. No one gives a fuck about that. I'm
It's
sorry.
true.
No one
it's
cares.
very true. Absolutely.
Right. But if you say
don't.
like your neighbor and 10 other neighbors on your street have jobs at this local place because you put your recycling in it, Bob has a job. You can see that. That makes sense.
You can.
That's a good thing.
Compare
It's tangible.
to that, relate
Right.
to it.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What are some of the overall conclusions that were pulled from the data, or some key conclusions made from the overall report?
That the
stood
industry,
out?
the industry is bigger than anticipated. So the recycling industry measures up to the pipeline transportation industry, broadcasting industry, and the paper mill industry in Texas, which all have around 18 to 20,000 jobs, employment. Which is not. I mean, we're not the huge fries, but we're not also we're not small peas. I mean, we're in the middle, and we're a formidable. We provide a lot of input to the state, but also there's a lot of output. So I mean, it's a good business, and what it does is it puts an impetus on us to help support us. I mean, everyone's going down to the state capitol this session to go, we need this, but like we're on the verge of collapse essentially as an industry. We have a saving grace with Mexico and all this stuff, but that's what it really did. Is it said this is important, so let's focus.
Highlight the importance.
Highlight the importance of recycling on the state through economics. Yeah. Again, I rabbit hole.
No, you're absolutely fine. It's much better than there's been a couple interviews where I've asked them a question to give me one sentence.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah. I don't ever shut up.
You know. What are one of the things that you found out about the recycling rate here in Texas that kind of just surprised you or took you back a little bit? If there is anything.
Yeah, I mean, really nothing. I guess it's higher than I anticipated. You want water or anything?
I'm getting over being sick.
Oh,
That's
nice.
why. So I'm going to be coughing a couple of times.
Yeah, I guess the recycling rate is higher than I anticipated. I thought we would be a little bit lower. The national average rate right now is 34% in America. And then comparison, Colorado is about 9%. In Texas, we're about 23%. So California is up, over 50%. So you have
That's
a
the
huge
recycling rate?
Yes,
Yeah.
diversion rate, right?
You said California was
Around 50.
Around 50?
Yep, Colorado's at 9. Yeah, so there's a lot of other states that are either better than us or they have some work to do. So I think we're in a better position, but we're also
Always get better.
we're geographically challenged because we're not like other. Colorado, they have some mountains, but at least they're in a square. Like we're gigantic, and so from El Paso to the border of Shreveport or whatever, that's massive amount of space to try to cover and get recycling to happen on economical transportation and everything else. So
Absolutely. Education and just things like this, like you said, going about an economics way and job stuff is the way to get that information out there.
yeah.
You already touched base on this. You mentioned that from the study came the House Bill 2763, correct? What exactly did that bill propose? And that bill basically allowed for this, correct?
So the TRDI led into House Bill 2763. 2763 was passed as a state bill, which charged the state to fund this study.
What did that bill kind of have inside of it? What did it kind of propose?
It just said basically the state needs to look at economics. So what does the recycling industry afford as far as jobs? What does it afford as far as tax payments? What does it bring out economically to the state? And that's where we quantified those numbers, the 3.3 billion and 17,000 jobs. So it asked the state just to put numbers behind some open-ended, how many people do we employ? How much taxes does this industry pay? Like, how much waste do we really divert? And so that was all quantified through that.
Okay. Got to answer that one. Take that, Sunny. Do you have the knowledge on the specific materials in the report, such as plastic products?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely in there. Our plastics recycling rate, right now we know we recycle less than 10% of the bottles that are sold in the state. So
Less
about
than
90%,
10%?
90% around is lost either to, the environment or just incineration or landfilling. So plastics could definitely be recycled a lot better. We know that we landfilled over 1 million tons of film plastics in Texas in 2015. So that's a lot.
How much?
Over 1 million tons.
In 2015?
So we have a big agriculture industry down in the valley, and there's also just a lot of film plastic in general through manufacturing and shipping and everything else. It's very reclaimable and reusable, but it's the systems aren't in place to collect it, so you lose it. So.
And it's one of those things where a lot of plastic items aren't for long-term purposes. They're for very disposable, single-use kind of stuff.
That's the problem. Yeah. Everyone's going after that right now.
Why not are plastics so hard to recycle? Like, there's all this myth, you know what I mean? You throw that in there, oh, it's just going to end up in the landfill. Why was that myth even created? Is it because there are a lot of steps that have to go into recycling certain plastic?
It's a hard one. You know, that's a multifaceted question. The infrastructure may not be there locally, so you may not have that ability to capture a lot of these plastics. So, step even further back, the original recycling systems had people separate stuff out by material. It was source separated. So in California, when it started, like I had a metal bin and a paper bin and a plastics bin, and then the truck came up and they had separate compartments. It wasn't all commingled. So you kept stuff clean. You kind of, when it got to the sorting facility, they would dump all the plastic, so all the plastic would come down, right? Well, right now it's not that way. Everything goes into one bin, it gets smashed together, and so then they have to sort it. So right now we use a lot of optics and computers and stuff to try to sort out these plastics. Well, plastics, in order to either get, longer shelf life or a better looking package or whatever, they're starting to mix materials. It kind of goes in that same thing where you mix a paper and a plastic and you can't recycle it. Well, if you start mixing multiple film plastic with a little thing of aluminum with a different kind of plastic and then another plastic, and then it's all glued together to make these pouches that have your rice in it. It's cool. It makes your rice last longer. They can ship a lot more rice to you because it's not a box, so those better, whatever. So that's the benefits they use to explain or justify why to make a material that you cannot recycle.
Okay.
So, but since it's multiple materials glued together, you can't recycle it. So that's a lot of the problems, is the infrastructure and the technology does not exist to separate elements once combined. That's why I like chemical recycling, because it doesn't matter what it is, you throw it in that vat and they all polymerize back down into monomers. And then you can deal with them individually. Also, you have just a lack of end markets. So right now we've had subsidies that have existed for virgin material extraction since the 1800s, 1880s. So paper, silica, plastics, all sorts of things have been heavily subsidized by the federal government. That makes it cheaper to get a barrel of oil, even though we already know it's not, the true price is never reflected in that barrel of oil, right? Because it's subsidized. But there's never been federal subsidies ever given to recycling. So that's another interesting whole other problem on another note. So that's a problem with this, like why you can't recycle a lot of things is because there's not a market. Nobody wants it because they can go get a barrel of clean oil and make plastics out of it cheaper than they can grab this consumer product, have to process it, have to figure it out and make it a new feedstock to use with something else. It's very intensive. But if we were to remove those subsidies, a plastic bottle to fill up with water would be like $8, not $1 to get a plastic. You know what I mean? The true value would be reflected. Then you wouldn't see water bottles laying all over the place.
No, you would not.
Right, because it would be worth some money. So it's not one single thing. Like there's not one problem with why you can't recycle something. It's multiple. It's infrastructure. It's combination of materials. It's consumer awareness. Like they see that little symbol on the bottom, the little thing with the number in it. That has nothing to do with recycling. A lot of people think it does, but that's all that is a resin code. So the plastics industry in the 1950s developed the little triangle with a number to tell you what kind of resin they were using in their plastic. It had nothing to do with recycling.
Nothing to do with recycling.
Nothing. No. It's just been something associated with it.
Yeah.
So they see the little thing and they see the arrows and they're like, oh, that's the recycling symbol. So it was picked up after it was designed as something that you could look for to see if it was part of a program. So yeah, it's hectic stuff, man. Like there's a lot of issues and there's a lot of problems, but like I said, plastic's not going to go away. All of the plastic that we produce right now globally, 26% of it is for packaging. So that's a huge thing to think about. We produced since 1950 8.3 billion metric tons of plastics. We've lost 6.3 billion to the environment. And we've recycled only 9% of that in total since 1950. 9% of all the plastics ever produced. It's a crazy thing, but it's not going away.
Yeah, of course it's not going to go away.
And by 2050, they say plastics, so it's like 8.3 billion since 1950, but by 2050, it'll be up to 34 billion tons of plastic produced. So we're at 8 right now. They expect in the next 20-something years to like literally fivefold the amount of plastics that we have literally seen.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's not going to stop.
No. Because we don't have a vacuum, we can't just shoot it out into space. We have an issue here, you know, it's going to go
surprised
somewhere.
that hasn't come up yet. But yeah, that's probably the next idea is like shooting everything into space.
That's as far as we know.
Yeah.
We never know what they're up to.
It's true.
That's insane. What is the Star are working on right now, or current projects that you're working on right now with the company, or what's kind of the next step for them, for you guys?
Yeah, that's the legislative, that's our bill. So asking the state to do an in-market development plan and an awareness and promotional campaign. So our bill is a two-parted. One, we want them to support and build the infrastructure here in Texas, but secondly, we need people to know that it's an economic driver. And so that's where we're actually, more than the environmental message. Yes, it does good and clean up contamination, but hey, it's jobs, it's taxes, it's everything else. So that's what we want them to look at and to tell people all about. So that's our project, is really discussing with the state and making sure the state takes a lead in not only in America, but in the global recycling industry as a processing place that they can, we can send stuff to, because we have a good port in Houston, so we could be part of that global trade thing if we build the infrastructure here to manage these materials. So that's what we're working on, becoming like the center point, at least in the center of America, for an example for recycling, how it should work domestically to enable circular flows, because we got to get away from linearity of taking stuff, making stuff, and disposing it. That's one line of capitalism. Right. So we need circular processes where stuff stays in Texas, generated in Texas, collected, and then remanufactured. If it goes outside the borders, that's fine. But let's also make sure domestically that they can handle that stuff too.
Absolutely. So it's not one of those things where it's out of our hair kind of thing, Absolutely. Obviously, you already kind of answered this. But do you think the nation has a plastic pollution problem? Why or why not? And what does this mean kind of for the future?
It's double-edged sword. It's a problem, but it's also a solution. So if you get a look at the benefits of it, that you have increased shipping of products, you have decreased emissions, you can get more products to people, which, I'm not really a capitalist, so it's against my own argument, but I see their business model. It makes sense. They can get more product out there for less, carbon emissions and everything else using these plastic things. But single-use plastics are a problem. Straws, cutlery, just the stuff that...
To-go containers.
Yeah, because think about that, the intensive process, if you really go back all the way down to like having a ship sail around and look for oil, and then tap that, then drill it, then pump it, and then all of those things that go into that end result of making a fork that someone uses one time to throw in the trash. Like, that's insane to me that we go through all of those processes, the transportation, think of all the little things that go to make this one thing that we're only going to allow someone, or only designed to use one time. And it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, that's no problem. That's the thing. We can get more oil. It's cheap. It's not cheap. Like, that fork should be like $10 because oil's been subsidized for so long. That's why it's half a cent and no one cares about it.
Yeah.
So we have a problem. It's not going to go away, but there's a big attitude change. There's a corporate social responsibility that's coming with it. Pepsi, Coke, Procter & Gamble. You see it. It's coming to head because people are asking for change. And so I was just in London this summer, and there's paper straws. There's no more plastic straws because the UK banned them, and it was like that. But no one did. They did it. They were like, great. So now we use paper straws, and I was like, okay. So everywhere I went, either you didn't get a straw or they gave you a paper one. It didn't. There's nothing wrong. You know what I mean? It didn't cause any loss of. People are crying over this, like, California's banning straws, and it's crazy what people think, but it's like, why is that such a bad thing?
But yeah, I would like to know what are their responses to, what are their angry responses to that?
No idea. Like, it just people
possibly negative about.
It's an infringement on what they want. Their personal, just like the bag ban in Texas. Like, they like plastic bags. Well, there's so many other bags you can use. Like, tell me why you have to have it. Well, I like it to put it in my car to use, to collect trash. Well, use something else, or like don't make trash in your. I don't know, man. Like, that's the dumbest argument to me.
But I say that's not a valid argument. I don't think that's something you can bring forth to the table when you're talking about something that doesn't biodegrade for 500 to 1,000 years. You know?
Yeah, but it got overturned, so it is what it is.
That's crazy. Are there kind of any last notes or comments on Texas recycling efforts that you'd like to say that you haven't talked about, or any data or statistics that you feel is important that you haven't touched base on?
I think that report's good. The city of Austin, of course, is a leader in all things forward going in Texas. They're always a shining example. So the circular economy is something that I always like to tell people about it. It's a notion that's not even a notion. It's a movement coming out of Canada and Europe, and now China just signed on to it. And again, it basically takes the linear process of take, make, and dispose, and it stops it, and it's all circular patterns. And they do it by separating out our components. So no longer do we mix our materials to make consumer goods that are designed for single use. Everything is designed, and the circular economy is defined as an economy that is regenerative or restorative by design. That's it. I mean, it's simple. So if you're going to use something at the end of its useful life, it's either going to restore where you got it from, or it's going to regenerate it. And so how we do that, we keep them in two cycles. So the Earth is the biosphere. Then you have the technosphere, which is oils, metals, technical components. And then you have Earth is like the human sphere. Biosphere, technosphere. Technosphere is the metals and all that. Biosphere is like the plant material, you grow paper and all that stuff, renewable sources. So we don't combine those materials anymore so that you can actually have processes where the biological material at the end of its use, whatever, can always go back into composting to regenerate soil, circularity. Technical components, you design them so that, I don't know if you just saw that, but Samsung, I don't know, who was it? No, it wasn't Samsung. It was one of these phone companies actually just did the first DIY fix-it kit for their phone. Because if you look at it, most of these things are designed for planned obsolescence. You can't repair it, you can't fix it, and if you do, it's going to literally cost you probably more than it is just to go get a new one, right? So that's the business, linear business model, take, make, dispose.
Yeah.
So that's the circular economy points to, if you're going to make these things, they are important, they are good, but design it so that either you can fix it and refurbish it and upgrade it at all times, or when it's finally time to get done with it, don't make it with glues that we can't get the batteries out. Don't make it with screws that are proprietary and no one can get to. So make it with common things that everyone can access and dismantle so that we can grab the components. There's more gold in one cell phone than there is 1 ton of earth ore right now. So gold. Yeah, they can go and mine and right now in a gold mine, even a well-known gold mine, they can go blast out a ton of ore, and they won't get as much gold that is in every single one of our cell phones.
Oh my God.
Right, so there's no point in continuing to pull from the earth when we have what we define in the circular economy as an urban mine. Look around us.
Yeah.
All of this stuff has been pulled from the earth and made into something. So why do we need to keep pulling stuff out? Why don't we just stop burying this crap?
Yeah.
And then when it's all done or this place closes, everything should be designed to either be composted or taken apart and put into,
like you said, put right back into
circularity.
That circle.
Right. So it's a huge. Check out the Ellen MacArthur Foundation.
Ellen, how do you spell that?
ELLEN, and MacArthur, it's MAC, Arthur, AURTHUR or whatever, foundation. And she's pushing the circular economy. She was the first lady to circumnavigate the globe in a sailboat. And that's where she kind of came up with this notion. The circular economy has been a notion since the 1970s through Walter Stayhall and William McDonough. And those guys, cradle to cradle. So if you ever heard of cradle to cradle, that's they explain everything in waste management. It's cradle to grave. Like, make sure if you make it, you're responsible for it until you bury it. Well, in the 70s, the guy was like, why do you have to bury yourself? Let's cradle to cradle. If you make something, then it's at the end of it, it should be ready to be made something new. Right. So it's a cradle. Right. So, but the problem with that, it didn't ever take off until this. So with technology and everything, now we're able to link and to share and have a platform where we don't need centralized systems. I don't need to get through Avis or Hertz to get a car. I can go and press Uber, and some dude who has a car will come and pick me up. That never existed. And you know what I mean? So like only in the last few years, we've built what's called the gig economy or the sharing economy, which is truly a circular economy, where we don't need, if you want to have a business, Uber back in the day would have had to buy, like a taxi, like yellow taxi or cab. They have to go buy thousands of cars to have yellow cab, right? Well, Uber, they're one of the largest transportation industries and they have no assets.
Yeah.
If you look at Airbnb, they're one of the largest hotel accommodation industries. They have no assets.
Yeah.
Netflix is one of the largest purveyors of like video stuff. There's no assets. It's all digital, right? So we dematerialize and share your economy. That's where products, instead of becoming products and everyone trying to go get the next thing, you just have access to service. That levels the playing field. So no longer is you don't have stacked societal brains, because the CEO versus the poor man on the street can press the same button to go get that same Uber car. There's nothing that defines your service.
Yeah.
Just access to it is. More people in Africa have access to a cell phone than to running water or toiletry. So you combine in a whole another discussion of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, and that's where you can start getting social inclusion and including people. Go pick up that plastic, and we'll credit your phone with a microcurrency, and you can make, so I don't know if you're into cryptocurrencies and all this stuff, but Bitcoin and all these weird things. In about 8 years, it'll be the norm. So,
really? You think so?
I know so.
You know so?
I know so. Yes.
I know so.
Yes, I know so. It's there's a fascinating stuff going on. Out of the classes I took in the Netherlands, we have about 100 years before we see a full realization of from linearity to circularity. So this is the proverbial, I'm planting the seed of the tree that I'm never going to enjoy the shade of, but that's okay because I know that tree will grow and provide the shade for future generations to come. So that's like the little metaphorical happy saying, but it is what it is, and I'll never really probably see many of the results of the efforts that we do, but I know that this will change, and throughout our generations, we won't be stuck in this industrial revolution that's been alive for 250 years. We're ready for an institutional revolution and to change the social system. So it's a paradigm shift, but just like your button, it's going to take a long time before that actually becomes a norm. So, yes. Again, come from California and everyone else cheering on Canada, and it's amazing, the movement, but you live in these closed, blinded, Q-tip run social systems that people are just ignorant to change and very.
They're comfortable. People love comfortability.
Yeah, people hate change because it brings a disruption, and if it's always worked this way, it should just stay that way, and that's not the way to work things.
It's convenience, comfortability and convenience. Very hard to pull away from.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
So recycling is in some trouble, but as I like to tell, we tell legislators and educators and everyone else, this is, out of this crisis, is actually one of the biggest opportunities we've seen in the last 25 years for businesses to grow and for us to actually be a domestic powerhouse in our industry in resource management. And so it's time for us to act, and if not now, when? And if not by who, then who else? I mean, if we don't do it, then who else is going to do it? So it's we have 2 years to figure out if this is going to work or not. So
2 years?
2020 is China's complete shutdown ban.
Oh, so they announced it on March, but they gave it.
2020 is their complete import ban, and then, like I was saying, the silver bullet was we immediately shifted to Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam for processing. Within the last 3 months, all 3 of those countries have enacted import bans as well. So no longer we don't have a silver bullet in the Southeast Asia seas anymore like everyone thought. They were like, oh, it's cool, shift it down there. Next, you read the articles. I just read the one yesterday that came out, and they were saying the next thing everyone's looking at is India. And it's you got to be kidding. How do we keep steering so far away from our own country?
Yeah.
You guys just are stupid. You can't get Asia, so let's go to some other developing country that still can't manage our stuff. That's gonna, you know what I mean? We're sending our problems to someone else instead of just dealing with it. So it sucks.
Not a very good idea. See, when you put it that way, it's like you just said, it's why are we doing it?
Right. It just makes sense. We need to do it here, and that creates American jobs. And